I'm Anderson Cooper in Cape Coast, Ghana, and this is a special edition of 360, President Obama's African Journey. We're coming to you from Cape Coast Castle, one of several fortresses along the West African coast through which an estimated 10 to 40 million enslaved Africans were shipped off to the New World, many of those, of course, ending up in America. The president came here as part of a presidential trip, his first presidential trip to sub-Saharan Africa. But it's also a trip that is in many ways deeply personal for President Obama. It's a journey that encompasses both the politics of today and the still painful memories of our past. As you walk around this castle, what goes through your mind?
Well, obviously, it's a powerful moment for not just myself, but I think for Michelle and the girls. You know, I'm reminded of the same feeling I got when I went to Buchenwald with Elie Wiesel. You know, you almost feel as if the walls can speak, and that you know, you try to project yourself into these incredibly harrowing moments that people go through.
How'd you explain it to Sasha Malia?
Well, you know, you try to explain that people were willing to degrade others because they appeared differently, and you know, you tried to actually get them to engage in the imaginative act of what it would be like if they were snatched away from mom and dad and sent to some place they had never seen before. But, you know, part of what you also try to do with kids is to get them to imagine themselves on the other side as being the slave merchant. And you know, that slave merchant might have loved their children and gone to that, you know, place of worship up right above the dungeon, and get them to make sure that they're constantly asking themselves questions about whether they're treating people fairly and whether they are examining their own behavior and how it affects others.
That's something you referenced actually during the campaign in your speech on race about your own wife, about Mrs. Obama. You said that she has the blood of slaves and also slave owners.
Right.
How did she respond to being here?
You know, I haven't had a chance to process it yet. I think, you know, we were both listening and talking to the children. But I can't imagine that for her mother who's with us, our children's godmother who's with us, all of whom, you know, are direct descendants of slaves, that seeing that portal doesn't send a powerful message. You know, the kinds of emotions that must be evoked. On the one hand, you know, it's through this door that the journey of the African American experience begins. And you know, Michelle and her family, like me, draw incredible inspiration and strength from that African American journey.
What must have been the most emotional part of his trip took place here at Cape Coast Castle. This is where enslaved Africans were held before being shipped to the New World, being shipped to America. They were kidnapped from their homes, taken from their villages, ripped from their families. And as soon as they were brought here, the men were separated from the women. Door of no return, through which hundreds of thousands of slaves were sent.
And on the other end, obviously, there's a sense of what a profound sorrow must have been felt as people were hauled off into the great unknown.
Do you think what happened here still has resonance in America? That the slave experience still is something that should be talked about and should be remembered and should be present in everyday life?
Well, you know, I think that the experience of slavery is like the experience of the Holocaust. I think it's one of those things you don't forget about. I think it's important that the way we think about it and the way it's taught is not one in which there's simply a victim and a victimizer, and that's the end of the story. I think the way it has to be thought about, the reason it's relevant is because whether it's what's happening in Darfur, or what's happening in the Congo, or what's happening in too many places around the world, the capacity for cruelty still exists. The capacity for discrimination still exists. The capacity to think about people who are different, not just on the basis of race, but on the basis of religion or the basis of sexual orientation or gender still exists. And so, trying to use these kinds of extraordinary moments to widen the lens and make sure that we're all reflecting on how we're treating each other, I think is something that I want my kids to think about, and I want every child to think about.
They say this is the door of return for African Americans who are revisiting Ghana. And I talked to one African American lady yesterday who said that coming here is such a powerful experience that she actually decided to move here. I know you've met with many African Americans who decided to move here. Do you understand? They say that there's a sense of coming home. Do you understand that feeling?
Well, I will tell you, the first time that I traveled to Africa, I think that there is a special sense for African Americans of somehow connecting up with a part of yourself that you might not have even been aware was there. Now, obviously, for me, it was different because I was directly meeting relatives and learning about a father I didn't know. But I do think there's a sense for a lot of African Americans that it's a profound, life-changing experience. The interesting thing, though, is I've met a lot of white Americans who come to Africa and say it was a life-changing experience for them too.
This is the home where everyone comes from.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a powerful sense of tapping into something very elemental about
Sure. Once
Africa.
you come, you sort of always come back.
Yeah, you do. So, but I do think that the spirit, particularly of a place like Ghana, where for all the difficulties it's still going through, the people are just incredibly open and friendly and welcoming. I think that makes a difference for a lot of people who, maybe African Americans who feel somehow that they never fully belong. And the only thing I would say, though, is there's a flip side to this, which is I know an awful lot of African Americans who come to Africa, are profoundly moved, but also realize how American they are when they're here, and recognize that they could never live here. And that's part of the African American experience. You are, in some ways, connected to this distant land, but on the other end, you're about as American as it gets. In some ways, African Americans are more fundamentally rooted in the American experience because they don't have a recent immigrant experience to draw on. It's that unique African American culture that has existed in North America for hundreds of years.